So the grand jury in Ferguson decided not to prosecute, not to charge Darrell Wilson in the murder of Mike Brown. Why? Because as the prosecutor explained, the overwhelming amount of evidence was to the effect that it was in self-defense and in his desire to comply with his duty to apprehend a felon, a robber, that he was forced to kill Mike Brown. So what happened? A whole bunch of rioting, and then more rioting the next day. And the police did not stop the rioters. In other words, they permitted the initiation of physical force, criminality, right in front of their nose. So that's why I call this an American disgrace. On the other hand, the jury was brave and withheld all the pressure and desire by the crowd to extort an unjust verdict. And they withheld all the pressure that came towards them to charge this man, even though all the evidence, as the prosecutor explained, clearly absolved him. It wasn't a murder or a homicide. So before in August, of these protesters, what they're protesting about, I want to go through that again so we can pick up the story. These people are protesting basically because they think that Mike Brown was murdered. They didn't have the facts. In fact, they relied on a whole bunch of lies. And the prosecutor, by confronting the liars with the physical evidence, was able to get them to retract their statements, to change their statements, to admit that they weren't even there, etc. So all these people in these crowds, these mobs, are out there on the assumption that Mike Brown was murdered, but he wasn't. And why do they believe that? Because they come to conclusions without knowing the facts. Why do they do that? Because they're fundamentally irrational in their approach to life. Now, there's three causes that I identified in my August 20th talk about why they're protesting in Ferguson. First, they're racist. They view things based through a racial prism. They judge people based on their race, so they take sides. So if Mike Brown is black and they are black, then they assume that the other guy is wrong. It's okay to lie about what happened because you're protecting your side. The other side is always wrong. And in other words, they judge based on a person's race, which is fundamentally irrational. They're not as individuals, but as members of a group. And they see the world in terms of my group versus your group. I don't care what the truth is. I don't care what the facts are. I will defend my group and try to do in your group. The third cause, as I explained, is a victimization mentality. They view themselves as victims in life. And this is a self-fulfilling prophecy, because when you have this attitude, you actually become a victim. They think that the world is against them, that the system is contrary to them. Really going against them and producing this irrational approach, they would realize that the real threat to their life are other blacks, other criminal black people most people, the statistics are there and overwhelming. And what they really need is police protection. So they're creating an enemy where they should create a friend. If they were rational, they would try to have good relations with the police, support them, and if we could get rid of victimless crimes, they wouldn't be harassed and they wouldn't be antagonized, and you could have a good relationship between all the members of our society, blacks or whatever, and the police, in the police's performance of protecting the individual rights of the citizens, which is the only legitimate function that the police do have. So this is what should be happening, but it isn't. What is it that's underlining this protest? Why were they protesting? Why did they protest all these days before the grand jury came to a conclusion? They're trying to put pressure on the grand jury. They're trying to intimidate, extort a decision that they want, regardless of the facts, regardless of what's fair. So the grand jury was able to withstand this pressure, and they deserve tremendous credit, as well as the prosecutor. He also withstood that pressure. That pressure is coming from these protesters who ultimately act like a mob, and the federal government through Eric Holder. All this pressure was on them, and they withheld it, and they just came down with the truth and justice based on the facts. So in frustration, of course, everybody knew if they didn't get the verdict that they wanted, they would riot. And guess what? They did. The police were not there ready to protect the property of the people in Ferguson. So all these protests, as I see it, have something in common, which is they don't believe in respecting other people's rights. So just like Mike Brown thought that he could go and take those cigarillos if he wanted to, he didn't have to respect the property rights of the shopkeeper, the owner of the store. These people don't think they have to respect anybody's rights. They have a criminal mentality. They think it's okay to initiate physical force against other people and take property, or even worse, just destroy it for the sake of destroying it. In other words, they don't even get a benefit. At least the robber gets the benefit. The vandal is the lowest rung of criminals because he doesn't even get any benefit from the destruction. So this is the problem that we have in America, and we have to talk about it, explain it, and get rid of it. Not everybody has fallen into this trap, but a lot of people. And as I said before, one of the reasons is because our government is doing wholesale redistribution of wealth, and that undermines people's confidence in the right principle, which is that you should respect other people's property. The government is not respecting your property. And so let's go to Obama, the chief leader of our nation. And what did he say about this rioting? Well, he said that he didn't think that they should take the easy way out. He also said he had no sympathy for the looters. My goodness, this guy is totally off. It's not a matter of having sympathy for looters. It's a matter of condemning them morally, explaining why this is bad for them. Ultimately, when people's rights, in other words, when you're likely to end up like Mike Brown. That's one of the reasons why you shouldn't be a criminal, a thug, because it's dangerous for your own life, not only for the other people that you victimize. So he says, don't take the easy way out. What's easy about looting and destroying and becoming a criminal? It's not an easy life. It's a horrible life. So I don't understand the moral acts of these looters, and to explain why it's a mistake, he can't do it because his own policies have the same problem. They are violating the same principle. They are not respecting the individual rights of the citizens because he believes in wholesale redistribution of wealth. In other words, he doesn't believe in respecting the property rights of other people. And this same thing happens with these other people that create this victimization mentality, like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, and they cash in on creating this victimized mentality, and they promote this way of being. In other words, they promote people feeling sorry for themselves, not accepting responsibility for their own actions, trying to get ahead, taking from others by not respecting other people's property rights. So if we want to get rid of this, and it is a disgrace that this is happening in America, a country that started out with such a clear defense of property rights, such a clear defense of the individual rights of the citizens, that gave the world great hope. This is what we should focus on instead of trying to correct wrongs around the world. This is a real American problem, and it's not that hard to get rid of. All it requires is a little clear thinking and a little bit of willingness to analyze and state the facts and not be afraid to say things that are taboo. Thank you for listening.